you know, where the Jews wear a yarmulke, right out the top of my head. Which is why today I'm wearing a Hamburg, because I've never much copped to the yarmulke, because it looks to me like a prophylactic on the head. And when his soul left me, I decided I should chase it. Because I don't know what else you're supposed to do after an experience like that, but run after a thing. I lit some candles. I smoked a cigarette. Because we couldn't do any of those things because there was oxygen all around, and we would have ignited. That was all gone. The morphine was flushed down the toilet. And the ghosts only rise by night. Just trying to weave these things all together here into some kind of coherent sense, so bear with me. I began chasing the soul, trying to get it back, trying to get the experience back of that joy that I'd had, because now I'm left with this utter emptiness and this broken and lost feeling. And my father, when he retired, he was a freelance graphic designer. Why he felt the need to announce he was retiring, I don't know. But he did. He said, I'm 65, I'm done. And he began to garden with an obsessive quality. He built a path to the river, which made me very nervous because of the metaphorical quality of just doing that, through the swamp into the part of his property, which for a Swiss person is very hard to deal with, the idea of unused land, you know, because there's not much of it there. He couldn't cop with this half an acre that was a swamp. Not that he wanted to exploit it or make a gold mine out of it, he just wanted to make a garden, some way to communicate with nature itself, you know. He used to call me in my studio and go, Lexi, please, could you come and help me move this 70,000-pound boulder? Or not, probably 250, 300-pound boulder. Big things about the size of this plinth, let's say. Please, you must come over. I know you're busy with the painting and everything, but if you could help me move this boulder, I'd be very grateful to you. And then he would call me a half an hour later and say, never mind, with a lever and your mother, I moved it myself. Don't mean to disturb you. So, it occurred to me that I should go to the river and, like Narcissus, look into things. And this is a famous shot from 8½, wherein Azinizimaz is the magic word that you use to take still pictures and turn them to life. Azinizimaz. So at some level, this is what this is an attempt to do. To take grief, in this case, and try to find love. Sacrifice. And try to not go insane. Now, I followed a path, the path that my father had laid into the swamp. They called it the Okefenokee Swamp, I guess because it was the most famous swamp. And in this swamp, he had found a series of islands where he made discrete little gardens and little bridges made out of either the natural wood that you had to gently teeter across. He had my brother build a kind of it was, let's face it, a pretty crappy Monet bridge, but it was an attempt at making the arched bridge, and it was very beautiful. And you entered this garden through, well, the way that I entered the world, through an island called my mother, Sainte Helena. And from Sainte Helena, you find all of my brothers represented by their own islands, him, Saint Marcel, like there, and then there's the Ile de Saint Louis and the Ile de Cité, because who doesn't love Paris? And I ran there, and along the way, I found a little ball. It was a tennis ball. And while my father was building this garden, IBM has a campus behind my house between the river and the highway, which hisses all night like an Ouroboros snake eating its tail. And magic fairy lights dancing through the trees all through my youth, staring out the window when I couldn't sleep, right? And he would take these balls that would come down from IBM because they had game fields to keep the programmers or whatever amused, I don't know. And you'd find softballs, baseballs, occasionally very ambitious volleyballs would make it all the way down. And he would collect these balls because I used balls and shoes and things in paintings, and he'd bring me a big bag. I've got you more balls, now make something. And so I'm walking along the path there, and I see this little tennis ball. You know, I'm like, oh, well, Dad, thanks for bringing a ball, you know. One last one, that's real sweet of you. I figured I should pick it up, you know, and put it in my pocket, because that was probably the last ball he was ever going to bring me. And when I got to the river, this is the Miamis River, I didn't know what to do now that I was there, and I reached into my pocket and felt the ball. Took it out and threw it into the river. And it stuck there, right in the middle of the flow, and stayed there. I mean, I saw other things going down past it, sticks, leaves. But the ball stayed in the center of the river until I noticed in my tears that the ball was in the center of the river. And when I became conscious of that, the ball came back to the shore, and I picked it up, and I threw it back in, and it stayed in the center of the river, and then came back. And I did this for a bit. Only later did I realize that I was playing ball with my dad, you know, which is strange because he was Swiss and he played hockey and skied. He didn't really play baseball or tennis. But I guess he probably did throw me his first ball. I mean, that's kind of as a rite of passage in any culture. And I said, you know what, Dad? This is a pretty good trick, you know? The whole garden thing, the whole metaphor for life, the ball, you still being here, dynamite trick, you know? But you really gotta go because you're freaking me the fuck out right now, and I got a lot on my plate. So, good trick. I'm gonna think about it, but you gotta go. You're done here. And saying that, I threw the ball and turned away and looked back. It was gone. And so I ran after it, and I'm running through a swamp like an idiot. And it's like the middle of winter, and I'm getting wet, and the ball is nowhere. Now, I mean, it had just been there, and then it was nowhere. So, just very puzzling. And I really thought it was, you know, a mind blower, and a kind of a trick that you can only really do once. And I like to call it, you know, the impossible genius of Daffy Duck, for lack of a better thing. So, call me Ishmael. I alone am left to tell the tale. And try to do it. This is the third time. It's been a long time thinking about death. Now we think about women and life. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a real pleasure being here in San Francisco. And I hope you enjoyed tonight's show.
Any questions for the filmmaker?
Not a single question.
When did you start incorporating video into your art?
When did I start? Well, I started making films when I was in the 5th grade, Super 8, and I loved it. But even as a kid, it meant I had to have a job, and to make a film the way I wanted to make a film, because I was shooting black and white and wanted to do sound, you had to A and B roll it, and use a Nagra, and use labs, and you had to do a lot of shit, and it wasn't casual at all. And so it would cost me $2,000 to make a student film. I mean, a decent one. I mean, I won some awards, so I was ambitious about it. But at a certain point, I discovered, because I was writing scripts, I discovered writing, and I thought, this is so cheap, man. All I need is a pencil and some paper. This is dynamite. And I did that for a while, but then when I was writing, I felt like I'd lost my body, that I was completely like a pumpkin head perceiver, just looking at things and going to parties and listening instead of partying. And, it was kind of annoying. And I discovered painting. I didn't discover it, I'd always been painting, but my dad had been a painter before he was a graphic designer. And at a certain point, he summarily quit painting. And I just thought of painting as something you quit when you grow up, kind of. And I didn't want to do that. For the same reason I didn't want to be in a rock band when I was a teenager, because I'd known so many older people who were failed rock musicians. It just seemed a pretty ungraceful way to go out. I guess I should have thought I was going to succeed, but I just had too many examples around me of people who hadn't. Or had become like, commercial musicians, and that's even worse than quitting at some level. But, so I never wanted to do it, but when I started doing it, it just came so easily, and again, it was cheaper than making movies. I was still trying to do it all, but I don't know, I got into painting pretty seriously. And then, at some point, I guess it was just the digital revolution around 2001 or whatever, and I started making these ebooks with drawings, and somehow I got a hold of some video, and it just, oh my God, you could just pump a million things at it. This is great. This is fantastic. And it was just kind of coming back to what I loved, but without having, once you had the down payment, once you had that $2,000 in equipment, you could do it as many times as you wanted. I think I have 450 films on video now or something crazy like that?
Yep.
You can't make 450 films in 16 millimeter, or unless you're a millionaire. Not the kind of bullshit that I make anyway. I like to shoot every day. I like to just shoot things. Half of it's junk to everybody but me, because everything I shoot I live through. So to me, it's kind of precious in a diary kind of way. But every once in a while, something will resonate with a larger audience, or I'll make something to resonate with a larger audience, or whatever. But yeah, that's sort of how I came to it, I guess. Long story. Anyone else?
That kind of answered my question in a way, but I really enjoyed your use of mixed media, and I was kind of wondering if you paint in order to film it now, or if you find painting satisfying to write.
Painting is still, I would say, my favorite thing to do. Like if I had my druthers, I'd rather, somebody else film me painting than me having to film myself paint. I don't know how that would work, actually, and it seemed to have killed Pollock. But story has it that when he saw himself on film, he kind of went completely berserk and never kind of was the same again, drink-wise and sanity-wise. But I don't know. It's strange. Right now, I kind of like speaking is as important as anything, acting, what have you. Painting, drawing, writing, and they're all kind of turning into one thing. And I don't really know. If you talked to me a couple of years ago, given a certain month, I would probably be very adamant. Oh no, painter. No, filmmaker. No, writer. No. Now I no longer bother with that. I just sort of feel like we're in a position where we have the means of production and distribution in our hands for the moment. And so anything you can do, you should, because you can find an audience on your own now, whereas you used to have to go through channels. You still need channels. There are still interweb tubes by which everything must be sent. But really, you can do things right now that you could never do in the history of mankind. And that, is terrifying to a lot of people, but fuck those people. It's really exciting to me and my friends, and I hope all of you, because I don't know how long it'll last. I'm sure that these bastards will seize everything back if we let them. But right now, you're your own museum if you want to be. You know, you are Warner Brothers. You are Pathé. You are Cinecittà. Whatever you want, you know. If you have a camcorder or a cell phone, well, it goes back to Coppola. He said it the best, I think, in Hearts of Darkness. He said, you know, I'm really depressed about the state of film. You know, I went in there to the Philippines with too much money, too many drugs, and too many people, and went insane. Literally, he's now diagnosed bipolar. And, you know, my hope is these little beta cams. And this was right when, you know, video, not digital video. Digital video is even so much better than anything you could have imagined then. But even with a beta cam, he said, my hope here is that somewhere in Iowa, there's a little fat girl, and she's Mozart, right? And she's going to take this camera and make something that me, you, and anybody in Hollywood could never even imagine yet, you know, because we're not Mozart, you know. This little fat girl out in Iowa, she's Mozart, and she's going to come over and make something that's just going to blow our heads out of the water, and it'll be like a whole new thing. And she says, I live for that, you know. I mean, if I never make another one of these big budget films, fuck it, you know. Still, in my heart, I know that fat girl is going to change the game, and it's going to be excellent. So that's how I feel, you know. And I'm just trying to be a little fat girl from Iowa, is more or less what it comes down to. And, you know, everyone I know is a little fat girl from Iowa. We should make t-shirts.
Thank you very much for sharing the story about your father. When I was watching the film, I was wondering, how did he feel about your painting?
Oh, God, he gave me his brushes when he quit. Yeah, I mean, well, he'd already quit more or less, although I found secret stashes of drawings around. But yeah, it was kind of a weird thing where he had beautiful brushes because he was Swiss. He was very anal retentive, and I'm very not. And so I like to beat my brushes into death. And, you know, he appreciated that. And I think when he was young, he was kind of a madman. He sort of took the what is it, Matisse thing, where Matisse sort of started out as a fauve, as a madman, and went, you know, kind of bourgeois and enjoyed, you know, it's nice to have a clean house, you know. It's nice to have clothes. It's nice to have food on the table. It's more pleasant, really, than struggling. And, you know, Matisse managed to pull that off. He said, you know, you should paint like an animal and live like a bourgeois. But living like a bourgeois usually kind of means you paint like a bourgeois, too. And he, you know, his stuff was really hard-edged by the, you know, he was big in the 70s, and that minimalist vibe was there, and that's what he did. And he said, I don't know how you stay so loose, you know. I don't know how you can just, I said, because I don't care, you know. I'm not trying to make a painting, I'm just trying to remember this moment right now. So painting for me is almost the same as film. It's just trying to put lightning in a bottle. It's trying to contain it or fetishize it and make, and when I say fetish, I mean in the sense of tribal art, where you take all the energy you have in your village and your tribe and you put it into an object that you then contain that energy and worship, not to say worship it, but it's there to represent everything, to keep time, you know, nailed down. Literally, like some of my favorite ones are Dungan people fetishes, where they take nails and they just build a body and then they nail nails and nails into it, so it's like a body standing in nails. It's, you know, and it's not Catholic, baby, it's something else. But it certainly resonates for Catholics, I suppose. But I digress. What the hell were we talking about?
I think you're Dave, your question.
It was just how did your father feel?
Yeah, he liked it. I mean, you know, he was very, very supportive. The only proviso was that, you know, when he'd go to the openings, you know, and he'd have a few glasses of wine, because certainly he loved women and he loved wine, although I don't think he ever cheated on my mother. He just enjoyed beauty, which I don't think is a bad thing. And he would just, you know, get enough glasses of wine into him, and at the end of the night he'd be kissing all of my friends, the pretty ones, a little bit too much goodbye, because you're Swiss, you can get away with it. We do it 3 times. And, you know, if you can smell a young girl and you're nearing death, you know, it probably keeps you holding on. But he would say things like, you're so lucky. If I'd only had me as a father, I would have been such a great painter. Which was very nice and a kind of a burden, too. But, what is life but for burdens, you know? If I couldn't move the boulder, I'll try to move this one anyway.
one last question?
Yeah, this isn't like a film-making question, but have you had any more like experiences with your father after?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. I certainly have felt that I have, but it's a fine line between spirituality and delusion. So I don't really know. I mean, like I said, when I climbed that peak to look over, you know, in the garden in Portland, which we didn't actually put that video in this thing because it's kind of referred to in the Yazinizi Maza a little bit, and it would be redundant, I suppose. I had the profound sense of his presence, but it was the presence of his aesthetics and my aesthetics meeting. And I don't know, I guess in that film I said the beautiful thing, the beautiful thing about beautiful things is that they keep returning to you. And that, you know, if you see a painting when you're very young at the Met, let's say, or the Louvre or whatever, and you see it again later in life, it's kind of like, well, we'll go back to a nail. It's like a point, and you can take time and nail it into a position. So you have 1 point, and then later you have another point, and then you have 3 points, and then that defines a circle, you know? And then it just keeps spinning around itself. And you can put as many points on that circle as you want, and I suppose it becomes more and more elaborate and more like a mandala or whatever. But these moments of beauty that we capture, whether in any media, are something that we hold, and that holds our attention and our memories there, and we can return to them. The older I get, you know, the more I have the privilege to look at things I made when I was a teenager or what have you, or 20 or 30 or whatever, and realize that, oh my God, I know exactly where I was and what I felt when I made that thing. And I don't know, I don't paint realistically, but it's realer than anything I can experience with any other thing, you know. I don't know if that helps.
No other questions? Thank you so much, Alex, for being here.
Thank you.
And sharing that with us. And yes, we'll conclude the festival tomorrow with the Disposable Filmmaking Workshop with Blake. So it's free, it's at noon, and we have bagels. So
It's going to be awesome.
it's going to be
It's got to be awesome.